In this week's episode, we sit down with Denise McQuaid to discuss her career journey all the way through to co-founding the Awakening Hub and their mission to empowering more female founders. We discuss who should become an angel investor and the barriers to entry, as well as the type of business an angel investment might be suited to. This episode was brought to you by Top Drawer Talent, the supply chain and procurement recruitment specialist. Let's get into it. Here we go. So, Denise, going back to the very start of your career, because you're quite an accomplished professional now, let's say. Did you have a job before you left school, or while you were in school?
Yeah, I worked all the way through, actually, Connor. I worked in a pub. I waitressed and was behind the bar. I credit a lot of that to my ability to walk into a room and being able to network without actually thinking about it. But yeah, I had to contribute to my education and all the way through university. So yeah, I was working from the start.
And secondary school, you finished the Leaving Cert, okay?
I did. I finished the Leaving Cert okay. I won't say, the most stellar Leaving Cert ever, but enough to get me on to the next stage as to what I wanted to do. I won't say I was very gifted from a classroom perspective academically. I hated the fact that it was so routine and regimented and the whole thing. That was not my strong point, but I got there and I got myself onto university then.
And the course that you decided to do in university, what was that course, and why did you decide to kind of go down that route?
So I was very clear when I was getting to the point of finishing my Leaving Cert. I loved the whole thought of working in publishing. I think I'd probably watched too many Devil Wears Prada movies from that time, but I was just interested in the whole concept of print, and I had been very fortunate enough to have a summer job that had taken me into a bookbinding company local to me, and I was taught how to mend Bibles and do all of those crazy things that you do when you take a random part-time job through school, and it became quite apparent then that I was going to try my hand at publishing, and what area of publishing I hadn't quite figured out. But there was a course in the Dublin Institute of Technology at the time, DIT, which was printing technology and business management. When I went, that sounds like a good fit for me. I'll go and see where that's going to take me.
Okay, and did you make the move to Dublin then to kind of...
I did, yeah. I had never lived obviously away from home at that point, and came to Dublin, lived on the north side and loved it. Had 3 great years, and between my second and my third year, I was fortunate enough to get my J1 student visa, which then opened up the door for me to apply for my green card when I came back. So I finished in the DIT, and I left for Boston 6 months later.
Boston, okay. Why Boston, and why the J1? Why did that appeal to you?
Yeah, well, I've always had, I suppose, a curiosity about the world. My mum worked in a travel agency when we were growing up, so my dad was in the Merchant Navy, a long, long time ago. So there was a kind of a curiosity about the world, kind of, I suppose, in my upbringing. And we were very fortunate enough as kids to travel. And then I think it was just, I had that, the New York, Boston buzz of, the States, and that, living the dream. And when you get the opportunity and you get your green card, I took it. And I headed to Boston because that was where I had done my summer in my J1. So I knew the lay of the land. I understood the city. I had made some friends, and I have some family kind of mapped around that ecosystem. So that.
And when you moved to Boston, or you got to J1, did you have a job to go to straight away, or did you have to kind of go on the hunt for a job?
Oh, no, I didn't actually. I initially got a bar job, obviously, it takes you kind of everywhere and allows you to meet people. But that was what I did initially when I got over, when I was searching for my real job in that sense, to move into publishing. But I continued to waitress actually the whole time that I was in Boston, alongside my day job, because I loved it. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Was it love, or was it financially?
It was a little bit of both, but I did love it. I just love the meeting new people, and seeing what's taking people to come out and have dinner in a restaurant. I'm a bit of a curious soul.
Right, that's how you became so good at networking. But what was the accommodation situation like? Were you kind of crammed into a room with 20 different Irish people?
Yeah,
all on J1.
Not on the J1. I was very fortunate. I lived with a cousin of mine. Now we did share a tiny little 1-bedroom apartment in the North End in Boston. And then when I moved back over, I had saved a little bit of money, so I was able to move in to an apartment. So I have to say I didn't rough it either on my J1 or when I made the move. I won't say they were big, but they were definitely kind of where you could call your own.
Okay, that's good. And then were you back then in Ireland before you went back out and got the green card, or what was that process?
No, I stayed. So I left for Boston. I finished finished in the DIT, left for Boston, and then did 6 years before I came back. So I had a good time, good run at it.
Yeah. And what was the first professional job you took in Boston?
Yeah, so that was a really interesting one. I went to work for a company called Staywell, and they were producing medical publications for the equivalent of the VHI. Medical insurance providers, Blue Cross Blue Shield and all of the American ones that were in there. And they were creating magazines that they were sending to their membership. And that was the very first job. So it was, in my world, it was like I had landed in heaven. I was working in publishing and I was seeing the whole process come together. So I'd gone in on the junior production side. So very much I was back in the old days. I mean, it's not that long ago, I like to think, but, it was, before obviously all of the digitization. Yeah. So we were, looking at images and the content and how it was all come together. And there was, yeah.
So that was your job, to oversee the content, how it came together and
Exactly.
how it kind of looked on the page when it was printed.
Yeah.
Okay. And your trajectory was quite quick. So I think in 3 years or 4 years, you were a managing director of a company.
Yeah. So I had a very lovely career, and it's not that it's over, but it's changed and transitioned so much in its time. Started in Boston, did my 6 years, came back to Ireland, and then moved quite quickly into another publishing role here, again on the production side, but at a much bigger scale. So overseeing the design, editorial, and content of both magazines and books, and a great time. And then after 4 years doing that, I got promoted into my first managing director role, which was amazing. It was an amazing time.
Was it the experience in the US that allowed that kind of transition to managing director role like so quick, or the career trajectory, or was it just because you're naturally talented or good at the job or worked hard?
I definitely think the US stood to me. And it has stood to me, I think, throughout my entire career. I think there's a pace in the US, and there's a confidence that it gives you when you're working there, that it just allows you to see things and deliver things and execute on things in a very innovative and timely way. So I think it has stood to me. But I definitely, yes, it influenced, my promotion. But I also think I was starting to get into what I would say is the thing that makes me good at what I do. And I'd started to get into that groove, I think, and started to mature. So where I had one side of the publishing, the design, editorial, content, the only piece that I was missing was sales and the finance side, to bring it all together into that MD role. I won't say it was easy, and probably in hindsight, I don't know if I would have taken it as young as I did at the time, but it was definitely a phenomenal learning and kind of set me up then to take the next big move that I did.
Can I ask what age you were when you took that managing director's role?
Just 30.
Just 30.
Yeah,
okay, quite young enough.
Yeah, 100 staff, nearly 8 million in turnover, yeah.
Would it have been hard for you, because obviously you're a big supporter of women in business and things like that. Was it hard for you as a woman kind of moving into a managing director role, or did you just take it in your stride?
I probably naively accepted the role.
Okay.
If I'm honest with you, Conor, I'm not sure I was both equipped, from a professional or a personal perspective to take it on. It was a lot. I would do it again in a heartbeat. I wouldn't shy away from it again, but it was time consuming, and it was a drain on a lot of things around me. I buried my head in my first managing director role for 4 years, learning my trade, right? I had never had a business of that size. I'd never run a business of that size. And, people used to say to me, oh, it's amazing you've got there so young. And I would say, yeah, it is amazing, but I also haven't probably had enough experience to actually, I had to learn on the job very quickly. And maybe another few years in a more, senior level role, but a more junior role to the MD role probably wouldn't have done me any harm.
Did you have a mentor along the way that kind of pushed you along?
Yeah, no, actually I didn't. But I did when I moved into my managing director role. I went and sought out lots of people that could support me on this journey. And that was a little bit of, why I suppose I've moved into being such an advocate for women in business is that you can't be what you can't see. And at the time when I took my role, you know, in my early 30s, there wasn't an awful lot of women at that level, even in other industries in Ireland at that time. So finding them to be able to have that conversation and them to be able to guide me was not easy. They weren't easily found. I found one or two. And then, of course, I had a great male mentor and male allies along the way that were encouraging me in the role too.
Okay, so you had to kind of look externally rather than look internally into the
Yes.
company for that support. Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, it's interesting to know. And you moved into CEO then after 4 years. That was, so how did that job then present itself and what was the job?
Yeah, so I tend to, I'm always trying to look ahead as to what's next. And that's not necessarily for me within job or career, but just in the world in general, in careers and where it's going. You know, I think about ChatGPT now, and I think about AI, and I think about, you know, back to, I only wanted to understand technology, right? So, so publishing was obviously going through quite a transition at that point, and it was trying to figure out how you monetize content, and it was trying to figure out how you bring the printed publication online, how you change and evolve the business model, which I'm not sure even to this day it has fully been able to do successfully in a lot of cases. But I wanted to understand how to run a technology business. And for me, it was about getting to, you know, if we've got a production team around a magazine, be that design, editorial and content, just the same principles apply in pulling together an app or an online piece of technology. So that was where my curiosity went to next. It was like, the publishing industry is transitioning and evolving, and in order for me to stay ahead and keep my career moving, technology is where I need to go. So yeah, I applied for a job. I hadn't anticipated I would make it all the way through. I did 5 rounds of interviews, and yeah, I packed myself off and I moved to a little city called Zhongshan in southern China to run a technology business. So yeah.
Jeez. How did you find out about a role in China, like out of all places?
Yeah, it was actually an Irish company.
Okay.
So yeah, I did all of my interviews here in Dublin, and worked through the interview process. My boss was based in Beijing, and from Dublin himself, but our teams themselves were all Chinese staff. So they had the business here had done some acquisitions in China, north, south, east, and west, and had decided that they would put in a Western executive team to go in and see what we had, and I drew the China South straw, and I did the interview process, and I landed myself in China South.
And did you know, like going through the interview process, that you were actually going to end up in China, or was it?
I knew I was interviewing for a role in China. I didn't know the specific location at that time. I didn't know if they would send a woman. I suppose I was trying to challenge a lot of things in that. And I got to interview number 5, and they said, we'd love to offer you the role, and will you go? And I had a conversation with my dad. He called to my house as I was going through the interview process. And my mum was really struggling with, you know, why would she go to China to do this? Yeah. And he was going, I am not here. I'm really not here, Denise. But if you get the opportunity to go, you've got to go. And that was it. And I always knew, and I'm very fortunate, that if anything that I've done or taken a risk on, if it didn't work, I always could come home. Yeah. So it was, let's go and see what this looks like.
And what was it like then moving to China? Can you speak Chinese or?
No, I can't.
Okay.
I had a translator who worked with me in the business. Okay. So it's quite an interesting move. I'd never been to China before. I am 5'6" or 5'10", nearly 6 foot. So I'm quite a bit of an anomaly in China. Blonde, blue-eyed, tall. Not a lot of people in southern China I've seen. Yeah. My build coming at them. I've had kids fall off bicycles, and I would get poked in the supermarket as to, you know, was my hair real, and was my eye colour real, and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, it's an interesting personal journey. Professionally, I would do it again in the morning. If I was 31, I would do it again in the morning. I loved it.
You go back.
It was an amazing experience. It's a very different place to operate than the US or Ireland. but it teaches you a lot. It's very relationship driven. It's very trust driven. It's got a lot of nuances to it in terms of how you operate. It's definitely made me a better leader. It's definitely made me a better listener, because you have a translator and who you have to take in everything they say, because the next thing that you say back is a direction to where the business is going or what's happening. So yeah.
And who would you have been, liaising with on a daily basis if there was a Western kind of executive? Like, who would you have kind of given direction to? Would it have been like the floor staff or?
Oh, so no, I only had Chinese staff with me in my location. So our head office, which was based in Beijing, had a Western management team. But my entire team down in China South and Zhongshan were all Chinese, yeah.
Okay, I'd say. Were you quite nervous taking that role, or when you went in, were you like, "What am I have to sign up for?" kind of thing?
No, I don't. I think in some ways a little bit naive again, right? And in some ways that's a good thing.
Yeah, were you just like so stubborn? Like, I'm just gonna make this work no matter what.
Yeah, a little bit. But I was also, everybody had said you won't move from publishing into technology. You won't be able to do that, Denise. That's a big leap. Now, I know it took me to China to be able to do that, but it was a little bit like, well, don't say I can't do it, because then I'll find a way to do it. But working with a team in China, they're the hardest working team I've ever had the privilege to work with and lead. Their work ethic, how they hold everybody within the team accountable for the piece of the jigsaw that you're responsible for, how they communicate and how they care for each other, how they build relationships among themselves. It's a learning. It's a fascinating
Different
learning.
culture completely.
Yeah, absolutely.
What was the actual product then?
Yeah, so it was an online recruitment platform actually, but it had a back end where before the real time of interviewing to video, before the whole world changed with COVID, a lot of that technology was been built in the back end. So it was an forward facing online recruitment platform with a lot of technology, client management, recruitment management processes that are now mature, but they weren't obviously back into it.
And were you like hands-on technical in the role? Did you have to like relearn like different technologies or?
Yeah, I didn't know what agile was. I didn't know what waterfall development was. I didn't understand any of that. And then a language barrier. And one of my favorite, I suppose, situations where my poor translator was trying to translate this technical argument between developers that was going on. And she was like, I don't really understand their language in Chinese, Denise, let alone being able to translate it for you. And they were like really arguing about which was the best approach. And I said, Stephanie, just step out of it, let them have the argument. And when they've drawn the conclusion, we'll come back in and settle the conclusion. Now keep an eye on the conversation, because obviously I can't hear what's going on. But I had these two developers, and it was just that natural. Two colleagues, wasn't aggressive. It wasn't, an argument. It was just we need to find trashing it out and finding the best way forward. And sometimes you had to step out of that and not try and control everything in those conversations. If there's two people and you're the barrier because you don't speak their language, step out of the conversation and let them get on with it.
Okay, yeah, it's good advice there.
Yeah.
But just going back to the education piece, right? What the education today is probably changing or slightly evolving. Is there any changes that you'd like to see kind of happen with the educational system as it is?
Yeah, the education system for me is still lacking a huge focus on developing the skills like entrepreneurship, and what skills does that entail, I suppose, is the next question. But you don't get taught how to network at school. You don't get taught how to build relationships in that world and network. You don't get taught how to, the sales skills that we all need in every job. That isn't a skill that's ever taught from an academic point of view. And I think, we all need to sell regardless of the job today, whether you're in the managing director role or you're leading an investment syndicate. It's all selling, right? At the end of the day, that skill isn't taught in school. I think building. Simple skills like building a really, really robust, PowerPoint deck. We we laugh and joke about ChatGPT right now, right? And Canva and all of the lovely tools that we have. Yeah. But the fundamentals, you need to be able to build a PowerPoint deck.
Or he's laid out the argument.
Exactly. And some of these things are just still not taught in school. And I think it's a real disservice to the next generation, because it's still a little bit, oh, you're an entrepreneur or you've started your own company. That's still not necessarily a chosen path or a natural path. Yeah. But I think the next generation is, I've chosen to be an entrepreneur and this is my career and this is where I'm going. So let's teach them the skills for that to be the natural conversation.
And sorry, now after like your CEO position, that's when you moved into entrepreneurship, was it?
So no, not quite. I came back after my time in China and I moved to London. And my roles in London were very much around really honing what I suppose my time in the US, my early into a C-level role, and then my China, bringing all of those pieces together to really shape what I felt I could add to a business. What I know I'm not is a CEO. I do not like the number one top of the pyramid hot seat. Yeah. I'm a great number two. And I think it took me both of those roles in the hot seat to realize that they're great and it's lovely, but that's not where I excel and where my skill sets really lie. Okay. And so when I came back from China, everybody wants to keep you in this China box of, you've got this China experience. So I needed to really define what it was I could bring to an organization. And I think I got to that point probably midway through my first kind of 12 months in London. And that is that I joined the dots between people, process and technology. So I go in and I can clean up businesses operationally really well, and I can take your team on that journey with you. I can put in and implement your KPIs and your critical success factors, and I can help you grow that business. But I don't want that seat at the top. Yeah. But I can really operationalize you for growth or the exit journey. And that's what I did for a number of years in London with several organizations, getting them cleaned up to be able to do the next iteration and phase of what that CEO or founder wanted to do.
You're not the first female CEO or previous CEO that told me that there's nothing wrong with being a really good number two.
Yeah.
What is it like about the CEO position that like people have tried it and they don't want to go back, or they're not necessarily happy in that kind of CEO position?
I found it incredibly lonely. I found it and I'm an extrovert, right? So I love being surrounded by people. And where you have to take the team on the journey with you, you may not always agree with the decisions, right? That you're being mandated by your board or being mandated by an executive that's, the next level beyond you. You may not always agree with them. So it's hard. It can be hard and it can be lonely. Yeah. But I think I learned a lot, and I wouldn't give you back that time for anything. And I certainly wouldn't give you back China for anything. China was career defining personally and professionally. But I think I also know that if somebody said to me, do you want to go and do another CEO role? I wouldn't even have to ask what the business is. My answer to that would be no.
No, sure. Okay. And so people, processes and technology, that's your mantra?
That's my mantra, yeah. Okay. And it stood me well. I've worked with a lot of really interesting businesses in terms of going in, because it's easy to understand. So if you are a business that has grown and scaled, your people, processes and technologies may have not done the development or the evolution at the same rate as the growth in sales, right? So in order for you to get the exit multiple that you're looking for, or for an acquisition partner to come along, or for you to really be an attractive entity for sale, you've got to clean up the back piece.
Yeah. Okay.
And you may forwardly look like an amazing company who's doing amazing things, but actually if you pick under the surface, there's probably not a clean CRM system that's working properly. Okay. There's probably not a joined up process between marketing and sales and product and the proposition, right? There's probably not that piece. And finance is probably pretty robust because most companies, have to file. but it's not joined up with anything else. So the decision-making process within the company, within the background, is siloed. And in order for you to be an attractive entity for sale, there's got to be a lot of rigor in that back office. And I say back office, and I say that's everything that isn't forward-facing to the company. Sales, marketing, product, the whole thing needs to be joined up to allow you to go out to market to sell.
Okay, brilliant. So you've been in lots of different advisory roles,
Yeah.
right? So there's probably, I think there's over like 21 different experiences on your
Yeah.
LinkedIn profile. But Awaken Angels, right? That's the one that you're a co-founder of now today.
Yeah.
What I know we've had like Mary and kind of John Ferris on, but you just want to explain to us again, like what is Awaken Angels and what was the reason you decided to get involved?
Yeah. So Awaken Angels, we started in September of 2023. And in a previous role that I had taken through COVID, I had run an angel investing syndicate out of Switzerland called Go Beyond Investing. And again, it wasn't that I was being brought in to understand the investment side. I was being brought in to do the people, process, and technology piece. And I happened then, obviously, I understood angel investing. I'd been around the startup ecosystem in London and in Ireland for a long time. I understood that journey. But that was where I really learned the trade of angel investing from that perspective. And so in COVID, while I was doing that role as CEO, I did take another CEO role. That was the one, but it was more to do the number two role in that sense. So I did that the whole way through COVID, and in tandem with that, myself, Mary, Claire, and Sinead, my three other co-founders and myself, the four of us had started a community called Awaken Hub for women founders across the island of Ireland. And that was set up on the basis to support women who were having challenging times through COVID. And to really support those that needed a safe space to ask questions or, be able to face some of the challenges that they were facing. Investment being pulled, term sheets, needing to pivot the business, the direction of travel, furloughing teams, challenges. Yeah. And Awaken Hub was founded, and Claire and Mary had I suppose the Awaken Hub company in existence before Sinead and I joined, but it had evolved from pre-COVID existence, which was an organisation that Claire and Mary had set up to support women in terms of getting them to pitch and present further. And then it evolved into Awaken Hub through COVID, and then obviously has grown as a community for women founders quite significantly in the last 5 years. We'll be 5 years in July. And then obviously one of the big challenges for women founders is raising money and finance. And so we sat down at the beginning of 2023, and Mary always sets us a challenge going, let's figure this out. Let's see if we can set this up for success. And so we have always been all island, so we operate both north and south with our community from Awaken Hub. So of course then we entered into 2 jurisdictions from a syndicate's perspective, and how are we going to overcome that? And then Mary was like, well, let's not stop at north and south. Let's make sure we can accommodate US investors, because that's going to be part of the journey too. And I was going, okay, that's 3 currencies, and how are we going to do this? And then one of the things that I had seen and learned across Europe at that time through COVID when I was running Go Beyond was that there was an education component to angel investing. And I had said to Mary and Claire and Sinead at the time going, I think this needs to be part of what we do. You could see it emerging in a lot of ecosystems across Europe, but it hadn't quite got to the point of being here in Ireland. And I said, if we're going to change this landscape, there's got to be an education component to it. So we set about to develop our 9-module training program that allows people to explore angel investing. And we wanted to make sure that angel investing was not perceived as something that you needed to be extra wealthy to get involved in, or you needed to have exited your business. We wanted to take down that viewpoint,
Or the
and
barrier
allow
to
people
entry.
to explore angel investing. It is a risky asset class, but allow people to explore it with a much more democratized approach, so that you could come in and start your angel investing journey with us at $2,000, pounds or euros. We'll take it in whatever currency. It's coming. But that was where we started back in early 2023 to shape what it would look like for us. And that's when Awaken Angels was officially launched as a women-led, not women only, angel investment syndicate, in September of 2023. Yeah, and we've grown and we have trained 75 new women to explore angel investing. And we have deployed capital into 7 companies now and growing. So, yeah, we're very excited.
Doing okay. And had you previously made investments before you kind of got involved?
Yes, and obviously Mary had made many investments when she had exited her business too, and I had to, through Go Beyond and my time there, and some of the mentoring work and early stage company development that I had done in London at that time as well. So yeah, we had a view, and obviously Mary has since subsequently gone on to win, European and UK Angel Investor of the Year in 2023 when we were launching, which is amazing, and has some great exit success stories behind her.
Yeah, definitely.
haven't quite got those
They're on the way.
accolades as yet, but we're getting there. But yeah.
Okay. And how did you what prompted you to go down the road of investment in different companies? Was it just because of the experience and the advisory experience that you kind of gained that you kind of thought there was an opportunity there?
Yeah, well, for me, it was, we had all of these amazing founders across the island of Ireland. The innovation that we are seeing in the different industry sectors that these women are leading and disrupting and making, and many of them are market making in what they're doing. And for me, it was always, well, they need that early stage funding, that very early risky money, that to get through the next stage to the next stage and the next hurdle. And then sitting with Mary and Claire and Sinead and trying to work out what that would be, then Awaken Angels was formed, to be that entity to support new angel investors to explore, and experienced investors to come together to access incredible deal flow, bringing those 2 communities together to back more women across the island of Ireland. And we're here to tell the tale.
Yeah. Are all your investments women only, or your portfolio? Okay.
Our investments are, we have a stipulation in the companies that we invest in, is that the women needs to hold a minimum of 20% equity in the business. Okay. There is a lot of bad practice out there where women are giving the founding title but not the equity to compensate their contribution to the business. So we wanted to take that off the table. So our companies are women with a minimum 20%. We have some mixed gender teams in there for sure. We have a fantastic brother and sister team, Niamh and Rory Dooley from BSL, which are making granola-based products, both for retail and mass distribution, out of barley waste. They're a circular business based in Tullamore, and they're a brother and sister team.
Yeah. And is your portfolio like a mixed portfolio of different businesses, or are you specialist in a particular area?
No, it's very interesting where our investors have chosen to deploy capital. Yeah. So we've gone from BSL, which is a circular food-based business, who knew barley waste could make such amazing protein-infused granola-based products, right the way through to cybersecurity. So we have invested in deep tech, cybersecurity, circular food, sports technologies, the drinks industry, the insurance industry, B2B products in the marketing space are all going through, and mobility are all the rest of the portfolio that will be coming through. So it's our investors make the decision to invest on a deal by deal basis as they work through.
Okay. And for someone let's say seeking investment, right? Who is like the investment? Who should like look at investing or getting investment from an investor? Like what type of company is that?
Yeah, so I think at the end of the day, there's a bit of a disconnect sometimes when companies start to think, oh, I need to go about fundraising. Yeah. At the end of the day, before you make that decision, you've got to decide kind of the trajectory or the strategy for the company or the business. Because at the end of the day, investors want a return on their investment. They want their money, right? They want their money back out over a period of time to be able to deploy it again or to have a liquidity situation that allows them to, go to Hawaii, right?
Yeah.
So if you are a company that is potentially maybe a lifestyle business, or is you would like to pass it on to the next generation and family, then taking on investment may not be for you. So I think understanding the strategic direction of the business, because at the end of the day, the investors want their return. That's the number one thing you've got to make that decision on.
Should the number one goal of someone seeking investment be an exit, or does it have is it just once I pay back the investors, we're pretty okay with a decent return?
Yeah, so I mean, there's lots. I mean, there's a quite a big movement across Ireland. One of our angel investors, Karen McGuire, built a business in Northern Ireland and recently sold the business to her team and has done an employee buyout. Obviously, that's a growing movement for family-owned businesses across Ireland, is that your employees can take it on for the next generation. Obviously, the exit, being acquired, be that from a competitor or somebody within your industry. And then there's quite a lot of mergers and acquisition activity going on in the ecosystem at the moment as well, bringing companies together to make them stronger, to take on new markets or new companies or customers bases in that. So there's different ways to come out of the business, but ultimately, whatever the decision of your trajectory to get out, your investors want you out so they get their money back.
Okay, yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah. And what end of the deal are you coming in? Are you coming in early stage, like kind of seed, or is it like,
No, we're in the risky element, and seed or pre-seed depending on your definition of that term, but the teams may have already taken on some very, very early grant funding or funding from those that have been mentoring them or family and friends in that sense, to get them up and running from minimal viable product to kind of a technology that's kind of ready for market, and then we're coming in at that stage to support them on that growth trajectory. Now, we in all of the deals we've done, we are not the only investor coming in at that point. There would be us and other early stage VC funds, us and other syndicates that may be niche and specialized to their particular sector, or maybe in a US or a UK market that we would all come together. So of the investments that we've made, the companies as a total over the first 7 have raised collectively 3.9 million. So we are a small and contributing, small but impactful contributing factor to that. Yeah. But the bigger picture is that they've unlocked 3.9 million.
Yeah, okay. But the important thing is to get the capital to move to that next stage.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is it a case where, someone, let's say, that takes investment could end up with only, 10 or 20% of their business? Is that possible? Or?
Yeah, unfortunately, and there is some bad practice in this as well. And we have some challenges in our ecosystem around universities and the ownership within some of the universities of companies.
Okay, because research products.
Yeah, and companies being spun out. So there is a lot of I think there's a lot of maturity that needs to happen in the universities here in Ireland for university spinouts. I mean, we've seen it. I've seen it in Imperial and Oxford and some of the Southampton and Bristol in mentoring guises that I've had when I was living in London before I moved back. And I think Ireland there's a maturity in this space that needs to happen in terms of research and university research. and how much the university gets to retain from an ownership perspective when the company goes to spin out. So we have a challenge there as a startup ecosystem for sure. And then there is some when you don't know what you don't know, back to the education piece around, I would love fundraising to be taught in school. If you are going to go down the entrepreneurial journey, let's teach you sales and about fundraising. There are some companies that have managed over the several rounds that they've taken on board to grow the company, ended up with quite a small equity holding.
Okay. Well, just to go back, what is the spin out phase? Is this where like someone would do like an accelerator course after finishing their degree, come up with a business idea that the college basically would retain ownership of that company? Is that basically what it is?
Yeah, so there's quite a lot of there's many different guises, Connor, across our ecosystem from the island of Ireland, but there is a lot of people who take their PhD, take their doctorate research, and then start to mature it over the time of their doctorate, and then start to maybe look at bringing on additional team members. So if it's part of your doctorate and it has started in the university and then moved into the R&D stage at that point into the university, and then out into hopefully into the ecosystem. But we have a number of programs across a lot of the universities that support that initial PhD or that initial research within the university to become a business. And within that, and then becoming a business, then the university is holding on to a portion of the equity.
Okay, interesting stuff. And now to move on, right, to like the hiring piece, right, for a business and stuff like that, right, because you would have worked at a lot of places, right?
Yeah.
When someone's looking for a new job, right, let's say, or to come work on one of your previous businesses, what would have been like your interview style, or what would you have looked for in someone that was kind of coming to interview for one of your positions?
Yeah. I have to say I would always focus on the person as opposed to the academic qualification that's come before them. I kind of like to know how you show up, really. And in that process, I always believe that people can be trained and nurtured and brought through to be brilliant at their jobs, if you can see the spark from the beginning, and that they are. I always look for incredibly curious people, in the sense of understanding, unpicking, problem solving. Can they actually bring those skills to the table, as opposed to the graduate degree or master's or PhD that they bring. That's important in certain careers and in certain industries, but it's not everything. So I like to know, kind of what are the pieces of the jigsaw that make you, and how can we harness those to move forward.
How early in your career would you have actually hired someone?
Yeah, really early, actually. I was hiring back when I was, I suppose, even when I was probably waitressing and taking on people during the summer, back in the day, before I even, was in a proper career job from that perspective. But always, I've always been part of a team. I love managing people. I love seeing people grow in their roles and go on to bigger and better and brighter things. I mean, there is nothing more rewarding than supporting and mentoring and guiding somebody in their career, and then you see they've got this stellar title, stellar company that they're working for, and just loving what they're doing. There's just nothing better than that.
That's brilliant. And do you have any kind of killer interview questions that you would have asked, or that you've developed even?
Yeah, well, no,
Okay.
I think for me, the kind of I kind of go with the person in front of me. In that sense, I often ask about the type of culture or organization that they want to be part of, because I think that's important to get a grip on that, because I think different companies' culture, really, you have to enjoy the culture of the company that you're working with. And I think it's hard for young people, a lot of young people today who've, came out of university and maybe started their career in COVID, right? So you ask that question and they're going, I have no idea what culture I want to work in. So I think, you know, we have to be mindful of that as we're hiring now at the moment, in terms of that generation, as I kind of say, the last generation in the COVID, you know. I tried to manage a team through COVID that were based all over Europe when I was in Go Beyond, and it was really hard. And I'm pretty skilled at managing people and leading people, and I've done it with my own voice and through a translator, and I would say I'm pretty adept at it. Through a screen is the hardest I would take leading a team in person in China over trying to lead a team through a screen. I think it's incredibly difficult.
Yeah, I actually think it's way more time consuming as well.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it's time consuming, but there's no human piece to it. I found it incredibly difficult. And I think our generation that, you know, came out and started in COVID, I think it's we as leaders and employers, and we need to be mindful of what that means, because the culture question means nothing to them. Yeah. I'm in a bedroom, and you know, there's 6 people in this house, and we moved to London because we wanted to explore, and now we've been thrown into this unnatural situation in an unnatural environment, and we're about to kill each other, but we've got to get on with it because we don't know how long this is going to last. Yeah. And it's not.
what advice would you give to like one of your founders? Like how can they embed like a deep culture or a good culture? Like what would you consider a good culture?
Yeah, I think our founders are very aware of the impact culture has on their business, and I think founders and I think entrepreneurs that I have met through not only our own community or those that we've invested in from an Awaken Angels perspective, but have been around the startup ecosystem for a long time. Yeah. I think founders are very aware of what culture and how it impacts teams. And I think in some ways they are able to have the fluidity to build those cultures that they may not have had if they were in a corporate job previous to becoming an entrepreneurship. They've kind of seen the good, the bad, and the ugly, and they want to change that. I do think women do a really good job of building inclusive cultures, diverse cultures, looking at the diversity of thought that is required to build brilliant teams. Not saying our male colleagues don't do that, but I think I think women are definitely, our women founders are focused on that environment where this is a learning journey for us all, and we're all going on it together, and we've got to find out how this all works. Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, right? What's your opinion on like 100% remote working? Like, would that be something like that you'd be interested in investing in, or is that not something that you agree with at all?
Oh, Connor. So
it's such
a big debate. Yeah. It's such a big debate. So me personally, no. I spend a lot of time working remotely myself, and I did through COVID, and just don't ever lock the extrovert up again, right? Yeah. I absolutely hated it, every minute of it. I thought managing a team in a remote capacity is really hard. I also think you miss out on those serendipitous moments that happen when you're in an office with a colleague, been taken to a meeting, you know, before you were probably even supposed to be in that room, you know, getting involved in a project that, you know, may have been 2 or 3 steps above where you were in your actual career at that point. I think putting your hand up, that opportunity to put your hand up is missed in that remote world. And I would say that had a lot of contributing factors to my own career in that sense, being in the right place at the right time, right? It doesn't all come from, you know, having the I suppose the experience to do the job. I happen to be in the right place at the right time a lot of time in my career, and I think you miss that in a fully remote environment. I also think I think there is an education piece for leaders of my generation who really struggle to manage in a remote world. I think we need to put our hands up and acknowledge that we need help in that, and I'm not the only one in that. There are a lot of us that, you know, if you talk to any of my peers, you know, that are fully, you know, and particularly that there is no contact at any point. So remote working, if I'm you're in Dublin, North Dublin, and I'm in South Dublin, and we can meet for a coffee, and we can have that conversation once a month or once every 2 weeks and get to see each other in person, but geographically in multiple locations. And I think leaders of today need to put their hands up and say, we're not good at this, and how do we get better at it? Because it's a skill, and it's not something we've been educated in, and yeah,
it's constantly evolving. Okay,
yeah,
interesting.
constantly evolving.
Would you, if a company came to you for investment and said they have 100%, they have some staff, they have 100% remote working team, would that be something that you'd be kind of set on changing and getting them into an office space?
So it's funny that you asked that question. Most of our teams, most of them are 100% remote that we've invested in, apart from those that are physically making product from that perspective, or they're teams that are getting together once a fortnight or once a month.
Okay.
I think as they grow in headcount and grow in numbers, that they'll bring their teams together more. Office space is slightly a luxury when you're a startup business and you've just taken on funding from that perspective. And I think when you're that size, maybe that 4 or 5 team mark, I think you can probably manage it. But as you grow and scale, I think you need to bring your teams together. So our investors make their decision. Each individual investor makes their decision to invest based on their review, not my opinion, which is a good thing, because I would love to see some of those teams in offices, but I appreciate it's a luxury at that point. But
And a syndicate, right? Because that's what we've kind of touched on. What is an actual syndicate? Is this? It's basically like everyone's money kind of bunched together and kind of brought forward into one business.
yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. So when we were looking at the development of Awaken Angels, and as I mentioned, we wanted an education to be a key component and the barrier to entry to be removed and to come down with that minimum investment ticket at £2,000 dollars or sterling, or pounds, dollars, or euros from that perspective. But what a syndicate is it is a vehicle, an investment vehicle that allows you to bring in small investments and big investments, and for investors to pool their money together to come up with a bigger ticket of investment for the company.
Okay. And is it the same amount of money, or is it split evenly throughout the different investors per company and everyone gets an even share of the company?
No. So the ownership that you have of the company is proportionate to the capital that you put in. So you could come in with your 2,000, and we may have an investor come in with 5,000 and an investor come in with 7, 10, 15, 20. We'll bring all of those together to make up the investment ticket. But depending on how much money you put in, depends on your equity holding within that business.
Okay. And then how is the syndicate different to venture capital, or is it different?
So it is different in the sense of our investors each make their own decision. And from a venture capital point of view, you're putting in your money into a fund that other people are making the decision of where your money is spent. We are smaller ticket sizes than venture capital, hopefully. Maybe not.
Maybe someday.
Maybe someday. But at the moment, we're smaller than what you would get from a venture capital perspective. But we advocate as an angel investor coming into any investment that you are bringing not only your capital, not only the money, but as I would call it, knowledge capital, your career experience, your career industry knowledge, your network to the companies too. So you're coming in with capital and knowledge capital. We often say angels have 2 wings for a reason.
Okay, that's a good way to look at it. And how much, like, if let's say someone was to become an investor, how much like human capital or time would they have to give a particular business? Is it like optional, or is it like once a month kind of thing, or how often is it?
Yeah, I mean, it's as hands-on or as hands-off as you want to make it, your angel investment journey. Now, we do advocate for our community being proactive with the companies that they've invested in, but we understand that they have all of our angels have their own jobs and their own lives and their own commitments and their own kids and travel schedules and all of those things. But we do ask that when you receive your quarterly report from the company, that you read it, and within that quarterly report, our companies will have asks. We always say, make sure you put in your ask. So I'm looking for this expertise, or I'm looking for more introductions into this industry sector, or, I'm speaking at this event. If there's anyone within your network that's going, let me know. And we ask that our investors read those asks if they're in that passive category. But our investors are really proactive in terms of supporting the companies. You can choose to be, as I say, as active as passive as you want. The majority of the investors would be very active in supporting the company.
And if someone was interested now in becoming an investor, and particularly an angel investor, how could they kind of find out more, or kind of get in touch with yourselves to kind of come on board?
Yeah, so we run regular information sessions, which are 30-minute sessions where we explain what we do in more detail. Okay. So obviously we take you through the education component and then how our investment operations work. So there are 30 minutes. So we have a number of them scheduled, which you'll be able to find on our website, awakenangelshq.com. So you can join one of those and hear about the mechanics of angel investing, or just drop me an email at denise@awakenangelshq.com, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
And you're looking for an angel investor in Offaly at the moment, are you?
I'm looking for an angel investor in Offaly. Yeah, we have trained and I've had the glorious journey of training all of our new angel investors. We have 75 new women angels across the island of Ireland. And we don't have a representation in County Offaly. It's the only county that we don't have a new angel in. So my big call out to people in County Offaly, if you're curious about investing in early stage businesses, if you've picked up a paper on a Sunday and gone, oh, I wonder how you get involved in that early stage business, come and talk to us, come on the journey with us, and join the 75 other women across the island, but don't let Offaly you down.
Brilliant. Yeah. There's a lot of redundancies going on now at the moment, right? And some people are being paid off to kind of move on. Do you think, if you've received a lump sum, that, the Awakening Hub or the Awaken Angels might be a good place to put some of that capital? Not all of it, but some of it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we would love for more women to join us on the journey. And I think angel investing, we have a lot of angels, very different profiles. So we have those that are new and want to learn and educate, which is where our program comes into play. We have women who are keen to explore it in relation to a portfolio career. So they've been made redundant and they want to start, taking on non-executive director roles, and they want to look at maybe some paid for mentoring and then look at angel investing as part of that portfolio career. We definitely have people who are in transition who are going, yes, I've just been made redundant, but I don't know what's next. Maybe I'll go down the entrepreneurial route and learning about investment, both from my own personal and potentially the next iteration of my career would be worthwhile, and they can come on the training program with us from that perspective. And then of course we have our male allies in on the journey with us too. We're women led, not women only.
Okay. And is there a particular type of person that it's suited to? I know you said you kind of have people from all different backgrounds, but is there a particular person that does quite well? Or is it just kind of, it's look at a draw? Because it's a risky strategy, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that was why, coming and lowering the barrier to entry financially is that you can start to invest and build your confidence in terms of your knowledge around how companies grow and the industry sectors that you might like to invest in. Yes, it is no doubt that it is a risky asset class. And kind of the industry standard would say between 2 and 10% of your net wealth should only ever be deployed in angel investing outside of your property, so outside of paying the mortgage. So you've got to be in a position to be able to put it back to the back of your mind, and you've got to be in a position to potentially lose it. So it's not a journey that we advocate if you are very tight financially, or that you're going to need to pay out big sums of money and, for education for your kids or whatever the case may be in the next, short term. We do say that it takes, a minimum of 5 years to realize a return if you're lucky. But, it's exciting. You get to work with some amazing founders, see some businesses grow, make a difference. And, a lot of our women are coming on the journey because they just want to see that number change. It's circa 2% globally that's invested into women founders, and it's worse here on the island of Ireland. I know that sounds terrible, but even angel investors themselves are 15 to 18% of the total angel investment community globally. Are women, 15 to 18%. I mean, it's crazy. We need to change that number. More women investing, more capital going into more women founders. And research is bearing out now that women investing in women is a good thing.
Yeah.
They take their teams on the journey. They make better decisions. They lead better.
Yeah, I know in our business, like I previously mentioned it, but we're seeing like more women complete education at a higher level than men. And then in one of our businesses, then we place more women into higher paying jobs than men. Now we still place more men overall, but I think the men are missing out on the education piece in that sense, because it's developed now, right, that more women are best suited to like the office based or the procedures, the process and technology, whereas the man is kind of out doing the hard labor side of things, or making sure that things are moving. I don't know if you'd agree.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I do think women invest in themselves more. Yeah. I mean, I started and I have always been learning and continually learning all the time, filling gaps throughout my career that I didn't have with, maybe short programs, short courses or whatever. And we put our training through CPD certification from an angel perspective, because if you've got to do CPD certification in your job, why not do it in something that really interesting like angel investing? So that was, part of our strategy to open it up into that corporate world. Yeah. But I do think women do a better job of the continuous learning piece and investing in themselves than maybe our male allies do.
Yeah. But thanks very much for coming on. Do you have much else? Do you have anything else that you want?
No, we're all good. Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thanks very much. A special thanks to Denise for coming on to the podcast and sharing her career journey. If you're someone that's interested in becoming an angel, or you're seeking investment from an angel, you can find out more information from the awakeninghub.com. The link will be in the description below. Thanks again for listening. If you could like and subscribe, that'd be great. Thank you.